this work session to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So PJ's recusing herself from this
Okay.
one too, right?
Oh, you want to?
Yes, I have
Okay.
to.
So the first item on the list is, has to do with the fire district, request to increase the fines. The fines are for the, false alarms that, we get during COVID, for whatever reason, we stopped collecting fines. And I think kind of got lost in the shuffle and we didn't get it back into place for a while. So there was quite a bit of activity going on. There was a lot of building going on between the Prydwen and the Pequot and some other places. And there was a lot of problems with the alarm systems and a tremendous amount of calls that weren't, that were attended to but weren't charged. And I think that opened our eyes to a number of things. So Andy Reeves is here as the one of the commissioners for the fire district. Andy, you want to come up and tell us what your thoughts are and what the way we do it now? I think the way we do it now is a 50-50. I think the first one or two is.
I got a little chart
Okay,
there,
thank you.
which shows Shelter Island's on the right.
Yep.
The first two occurrences are not charged. And then it goes 200, 400, 600. And then I'm showing a couple other towns and what they do. Some of them are in line with us, other ones are quite a bit more as far as fines. So
And then after the fact, it's a 50-50 split.
yeah,
Okay,
50 goes to the town.
yes,
And 50 goes to the district.
right.
So, yeah, we've had a lot of false alarms, mainly because of the new construction, when you're discussing with some of the new hotels and restaurants and all that. So I did a little digging to find out what the process was. You know, each police officer on duty will make a report to the clerk, I guess.
Right.
Monthly, there's a ledger or something that's been sent to the clerk so she can record the false alarms and send a letter, I assume, if there's a fine due. And so I know you guys are familiar with the fire department. We go 24 hours a day, no matter what. And if we get a lot of false alarms, it's kind of bad for the guys.
Yeah.
They go, well, should I go to this? You know, because they had 2 false alarms already this week.
Like the boy who cried wolf.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm proposing in this sheet that Shelter Island change the code slightly. The way it is now is the first 2 calls on Shelter Island, there's no charge.
Right.
And then it goes, 3rd call is 200, 4th call is 400, 5th call is 600. You know, I don't know if you want an actual proposal from me, but I would say that the first call should be, you know, no charge, like all the other towns do. And then the next should be like 400, like Southampton, East Hampton do. And I would consider the next one to be 800 or something, because you really want an incentive to have people look into the problem, take it seriously, and do something about it. So we're not calling the firemen out in the middle of the night or 3 times a week to go to the same place. And there's a couple things I wrote down just to,
How about can you just go further, like the next two calls?
The fourth and fifth?
what did I say? 0 for the first one.
Right.
400 for the second one. And like doubling every time, 800
Double,
for the
okay.
third one. That's more than any town, but
Yeah.
I mean, you really want to make it clear that you need to do something about it. $800 is a lot of money, but for some of these places, you need to.
So are you maxing at 800, Andy, or are you gonna keep going up? What would the fourth call be?
Fourth call would say be another $400
Okay.
to 1,200 or something like that. And
Okay.
And then 16.
And then
so there's,
16 for the fifth,
yeah, I don't know if you just keep going on.
up by 200. And then, because after, right now, the code says any calls thereafter the fifth, it's an extra 200.
just out of curiosity,
Maybe
Andy,
change that to an
I
additional
don't know if
400,
you-
then it just keeps the process rolling.
I don't know if you have this data available to you, but how many, in this past year, how many people would be a third or fourth or a fifth call? Do you have an idea that
It would be
same house, same residence, same
It would be
business?
3 of the major hotels would be the offenders.
They would be the offenders.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this continual, or was this basically when the construction was going on?
Some of them had problems in the beginning.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between a false alarm and somebody having an alarm system that needs some kind of maintenance.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that. And, that has to be figured out
Right.
by the police officer on duty at the time. Is this really a false alarm, or is this something other than a false alarm?
So,
Can I just chime in on that part, Jerry?
yeah, go ahead, Jim.
We
Chief.
let the fire chiefs determine if they're false or not false. We document their findings in a report. So it's not up to the police department to determine if a fire alarm is false. That is on the fire chiefs. We are part of the response team, but after each call, we'll ask the fire chief, was that a false alarm? Because I think you'll find there's far more in the gray than you may realize.
Yep. Sure.
So,
I just want to be fair and
Right.
so,
Yeah. so the concern would be, I mean, obviously, we have to address the false alarms. And I know we had some odd situations with the hotels because they were building and installing, and, while the construction was going on, there was a lot of problems. My fear would be that they shut them off while they're doing the construction. So if we get too, drastic, but we have to do something, so I'm not really sure where the happy medium is.
I mean, the alarms are not required, but they may be required by the insurance company. I don't know.
Well, once they're open, I'm sure that they have to have them. But I'm just thinking, because I mean, like, one of them had like 15 calls.
Yeah.
It was like, it was over $20,000 if we find them for everything. So I could see the contractor saying, screw it, I'm just gonna shut the alarm off. And that's,
I think
The
there's
risk.
some kind of balance between the fines and the,
Yeah. What I'm getting at is I think, those are like extenuating circumstances. Like normally, like you said, every day, maybe you'll get 1 or 2 calls from a restaurant a year.
Yeah.
As opposed to 15 while they're constructing.
Right.
So I think, that somehow that has to be thought in. My other thought is, going from nothing from the first 2 calls to 400, 800, 1,200, I'd kind of like to go, my suggestion would be to go from the first one, obviously nothing. The second one, maybe start at 2, and then go up. So you're not going way up right away.
Right.
In other words, they might be having a problem with the alarm.
Yeah.
Give them a little bit of, give them a second call to try to get it working.
I might be missing something, but it goes up by $200 increments right now. I think the
This
first
is more, this is more than 200. This is 400.
No, Chief, he's saying, because right now, our second call is free. So the second call will now start at 200.
if you took out B, the second false, just make the second 200, And then increments of 200, to me, is very, very fair.
No, but that's not what the proposal was. The proposal was 400, 800, 1,200, 1,600. That's $400 increments.
I guess I'm saying I'm in disagreement with that.
You don't think that's too much?
I think that the current code is very fair. I think we have to do a better job at make sure we bill them. And you could drop the second false as no charge if you wanted to. But you know, when you talk about 200 for the second false and then 400 for the third false, and then 600 for the fifth false, those increments, Jerry, are pretty substantial and they go up pretty fast. People are correcting their systems as fast as they can. I mean, they don't want to have false alarms. They don't want to pull the volunteers out at night. And maybe you just have a manner where you go after, we could go after them through the code enforcement where we, not shut a place down or go after it differently if we have that many false alarms.
I think the intent has to be to make it strong enough that they feel it in their pocket that they have to do it.
Yeah, I thought perhaps you might have a commercial fine structure and a residential, but because, it's like most of the false alarms are in the commercial area, and their ability to pay is probably greater. Then again, you're calling out the same amount of guys, whether it's a house or a hotel.
Yeah. How does it work? I don't know, Chief, or you or Andy would know this. You get a false alarm call and it's an alarm problem and you get fined. Is the alarm company responsible for that or is the homeowner?
I believe it's the homeowner.
Yes.
Yeah. But,
Even if there's something wrong with the alarm?
well, the homeowner has to go to their alarm company and say, hey, listen, I'm getting fined. You guys
Right.
got it.
Correct.
That's the way we go.
I want an important question here. A lot of this probably is determined, these false alarms on an alarm issue, that the alarm is malfunctioning somehow.
Yeah, it's possible, yeah.
Okay, so I think that what I would be a little skeptical of is a minor fire in the kitchen type of thing where you call for, and it was a minor fire in a garbage can type of
Just
thing.
the smoke set
But
off the.
That's a real fire alarm.
That's not a false alarm.
Okay, all right, okay. So I just want to make that clear that that's not.
Yeah.
The third thing is the smell of gas. Somebody goes in the house,
Yeah.
there's an odor that they detect. They're not sure whether it's a gas issue or not.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a false alarm either.
That's not gonna, okay.
because-
So I'm thinking that then most of this is aimed at the alarm itself is malfunctioning.
Yeah, the installation or the alarm equipment
Okay.
or something about it is not working correctly.
Okay.
And I made a couple of notes here on the bottom, just thoughts I had on how you would institute this, because I thought maybe if there was somebody who couldn't pay, they're starting up a business, like you're saying, their alarm company the alarm doesn't work correctly and all of a sudden they get $1,000 in fine. Well, I think they should be able to write a letter or make an appearance before the board, the town board, and say, listen, I'm doing the best I can, and,
Well, it's funny you say, Stephen, I was going to ask
I
you.
was gonna appeal
Can we go
process.
after the alarm company or is that strictly with the homeowner or business to do that?
Well, before I get into that, so Southampton has a public safety commission or whatever where entities can appeal alarm fees. They have an entity like that. Arguably, yes, you can write it into the code, but good luck. So, at the end of the day, the homeowner is ultimately responsible and they have to go after. But what I would recommend at this point is, I don't know if we form like a quick working group and come back with something more concrete for the board to dig their teeth into.
Well, the one thing you notice that probably the trend on Shelter Island, nobody, 20, 30, 40 years ago, people didn't have alarms at their homes.
Yeah.
Maybe businesses might have, some businesses might have, but probably a vast number of businesses didn't have alarms. It was Shelter Island. Then, of course, we had the Wancora thing, we had a couple of other break-ins. Now people are a little bit more alarm crazy about everybody going out and getting an alarm for their
Most
house.
of the bigger houses all have alarms.
Yes.
It's just
So-
standard for
Yeah,
us.
yeah. But I think even in the not so bigger houses, that people are looking at alarm systems, because of the threat of increased crime or something. We're not immune to it any longer. This is not maybe.
I would say half of our calls come from an alarm, either a false alarm or a legitimate alarm, coming through an alarm system, at least half.
Yeah.
And there is a definition of false fire alarm. An alarm signal activated by cause or events other than the commission of emergency which the fire alarm system is designed to detect. An alarm system activated by violent or unusual conditions of nature or other extraordinary circumstance not subject to the control of the alarm system owner shall not constitute a false fire alarm. So, as the chief said earlier, it would be the fire chief making that call as to whether or not it met that definition of a false.
We have alarms being triggered by workers in the building sanding or making dust for some reason.
Right.
Or a heavy moisture situation. And we would consider those false alarms. Because if they repeat,
So anyway, so let's say you get something like that, I could work during the day, you get does the chief, one of the chiefs go and inspect before they call out, or?
well, this is the case of the crying wolf. After a while, it's most likely a situation like that. The chiefs always go to the fire scene ahead of, the rest of the guys all respond to their trucks and then go. So the chief's there within a couple of minutes. If he sees that it's a false alarm or something we don't have to take out all the trucks for, then he'll radio us and say, just stand by until we resolve this, or don't come at all.
But technically, that's still a false alarm, because the guys are called out.
Once the alarm goes off.
Yeah.
And that falls within that definition. What they're talking about, like a hurricane or something causing them.
So I think, just to move forward, I think we're all in agreement that this has to be changed. I don't know if you want to do, like Steven said, a working committee. I have two questions. One is Southampton, the time period, 5 years. Does that mean the fifth call could be in 5 years?
I think so. It was
Yes.
a little confusing.
Yeah.
I think on Shelter Island, we turn it over
Every year? Yeah, definitely, that makes
Just for
sense.
accounting
Everybody else
purposes or
does.
something like that.
Yeah. And then the other thing, I think one of your proposals, I don't even know if you have, you don't have as a proposal, but I would suggest doing like East Hampton and Southampton, and rather go 50-50, do a 70-30. Because, the town, other than doing the paperwork, is really no.
It's, we just want really to see this resolved. It's less about collecting fees than it is about getting the system to work right and taking the load off the firemen. So, whatever split is on is good, but that's not the major concern of the fire district.
Just out of curiosity, Eddie, being a school teacher and having the same problem at Carr Place where a group of kids were calling for false alarms. Have you, in the last decade, had seen any sign of that in the school?
No, I don't think I can recall a whole, that's the whole nother classification for that. That's intentional false.
That comes with
Right.
And,
all kinds of stuff.
but I don't see that as a problem.
Yeah.
One of the things,
And just real quick, we have that in our code and it's a $250 fine.
And to me, that should.
Intentional for.
I think that should be at least doubled. Intentional.
Yeah, I would say so too.
Is a serious situation.
Yeah.
one of the things that the clerk's office is having trouble with is actually getting people to pay. I know that they've been sending out letters and calling people who haven't been paying, so maybe we need a fine if you don't pay within 60 days or something like that.
I put a.
You need to put that in code.
This, I don't know if you can put it on their taxes or, get serious about having them pay, but.
Right.
it must
Well,
be-
East Hampton has a lien.
Yeah,
Yeah, we may want to explore that.
Okay.
supervisor has shared, we collect all the alarm data here and we transfer those records over. So you can see the fire alarms in 2022, looks like we have 107, the year before was 83, down to 45, but there were other years, you can go along the red lines are the fire. We have more other alarms than we've had in the past, but we do have some more alarm systems. It's probably progressively gone up from that's 2012. My data probably goes back further than that. So I'd be glad to assist in this. And look, we have an excellent volunteer fire service. I'm in total agreement with everybody on not getting them up and out in the middle of the night when they don't need to be. Classifying alarms isn't always as simple as we may want to believe, because there's, again, what I would say, a lot of gray area. Somebody burns toast in the kitchen. Some might think the alarm's doing what it should be doing, and some may say, no, that's a false alarm, right? So if everybody that burned toast in a given day, the alarm went off and the fire department went out, to me, that's a false alarm. The alarm shouldn't go off for burning toast,
Right.
Because of the reasons that I just articulated. But the fire chief may come there and say, no, the alarm's doing what it's supposed to do. We're not classifying that as false. We respect their decision and note that in the report. Some steam from a shower kicking off an alarm. Is that a false alarm or is that a real alarm? I think you would be surprised at how many gray area alarm codes have to go into this.
That's a good point.
And ultimately, it's the duty of the fire chief to make that call, and we respect that call.
Yeah, just to expand on that, burnt toast and humidity from the shower, you would think might be a false alarm, but there's some places we've been to repeatedly for moisture from the shower, like a dozen times in a year.
Yeah.
So that means that something has to be done.
Right.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
It's not our problem, it's their problem.
I agree with you, Andy, on that completely. But not all the fire chiefs do each time.
Yeah. Well, we
Have to be
could
consistent.
have a meeting with them to try to.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess the next step would be Stephen informing us, or Meg, you like you.
All right, Stephen, let's do it.
Yes.
All right.
Chief, would you like to be part of it?
Sure.
All right, thanks.
Are bomb threats also covered in that by any chance? Because I'm sure the police come out and fire department may come out.
No, the bomb threats aren't.
That's a whole other classification.
Okay.
That's more penal law.
Yeah.
And they used to be very popular in school also around test time, especially on a nice day. We had bomb threats called, and what happened was for every minute we were out, the principal recorded it. We're out 22 minutes, we're out 34 minutes, we're out an hour and 5 minutes for a bomb threat. They pinned it on a Friday afternoon. They canceled all interscholastic activities, and the kids made up the time. That stopped immediately. Immediately. I mean, to be real honest with you, the kids knew who it was.
Yeah, right.
They put the word out. We'll never do that again, because at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, I want to be going home, or I want to go to practice or a game. I don't want to be sitting in school till 4:30, 4:45, making up time for 3 weeks in a row, because we have 3 hours and 22 minutes to make up.
So Andy, you volunteered too for the group, right? Okay.
Do you want my cell phone number? Or?
I think we can get it.
Okay.
Andy, thanks very much.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, Andy.
Okay, next item, we'll wait for Meg and BJ to come back.
Yeah.
I'm not Meg, Amber and BJ.
Right here.
This is a very involved thing.
Yes.
It's not.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
simple as.
It's not, it's tough. I do like the fact of increasing it.
Well, and I think that actually collecting the fee is becoming a big problem.
Yeah, right.
So I think we need to
Yes.
maybe increase or have a penalty if you don't pay in a certain amount of time. Or it leans by a tax or something.
Yeah, that's, again, Southampton,
Yeah.
they got a good program and they put slap a lien on, and that seems to jog people into.
Yeah.
Steve, before we go to the next one. Like, no, where it doesn't need to be. Going forward, should Amber get a ruling on, I mean, I don't see the conflict being the treasurer for the fire district. There's no financial gain for her.
Well, no, but I'm an employee of the fire commissioners. Thank you.
That's why I recused myself on the cell tower years ago and recused myself on this. But that's the only.
I highlighted some of the stuff with her
Recused myself in
nonsense
7
spot zoning.
years. So, but I will go to the ethics committee just to see.
Yeah.
I did have a big conversation.
Right.
Not formal, so. There's not that much that possible.
You read this,
Exactly.
this document, Meg, this document, this is like the epitome of a liberal state government.
What is?
This zoning and the comprehensive plan. Yeah, this one is very, I mean, when you're.
Did I give you that?
No,
I had that.
you might have, yeah, no, it's stunning. It's like, considering housing, you need to think regionally,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay. Okay, next on the list, we have flood mitigation. Ferry flood mitigation study. Joe and the chief have been working on this. Put out a request for proposals. Joe has those, he's in the process of reviewing them. Joe, you want to give us an update on?
Yes, purpose of this discussion is just to be an update to the town board on the overall project progress and to give some background in case any of the board members are not familiar with the project. As part of the town's hazard mitigation plan, we've identified service outages at the North and South Ferry terminals as a liability to functionality of the community, both on an economic basis day to day and also for emergency response purposes. We had an incident during Hurricane Sandy where there was a person needed to be evacuated and just was barely able to make it out, not on an emergency vehicle, but an ad hoc Good Samaritan type situation. And that has spurred interest in receiving funds to study what improvements could be made at the North and South Ferry terminals and their complementary North Haven and Greenport terminals to improve the resiliency of the system. So we solicited funds through our contracted grants writer, and we received funding to analyze and develop solutions through the Department of Homeland Security. They've now awarded us about $190,000 to engage a consultant. The scope of that consultant's work is to study the existing conditions operationally, how each ferry terminal functions, how the auto and pedestrian traffic actually, board and deboard the vessels, understand what the water level constraints are, both too high or too low to facilitate service, and to understand what are the choke points as we stress those conditions. So as the water levels rise, what components of the system no longer function? Is it the ability to load? Is it the ability to get a car through the road to the ferry? Is it the ferry that can't make the transit? Nonetheless, that's the scope of the study, and we put a RFP out advertised. We received 2 bids, 1 no bid, and
What's the no bid?
no bid means they were directly contacted, somebody we've either dealt with before or someone in the project, forwarded to a consultant that they thought was relevant in advertising. And they replied back saying that they received it, but they've not bid yet. So I typically qualify those for the sake of counting who was solicited and how many people decided to participate versus, maybe didn't even know that. In either bids we received are within the project budget. I'm sorry, one of them is within the project budget. The other one is just marginally over the project budget. And the project budget, for the sake of this conversation, is what the grant award covers. So we don't necessarily have a project budget, but we've based it on the maximum that we could be reimbursed through the grant. The grant program allows for 90% coverage of the expenses with 10% match required by, in this case, the town. And we have engaged both North and South Ferry companies as partners on the project, and they will be contributing to the that 10% financial match. final amount will vary depending on which contract we ultimately receive. Both firms that submitted bids are local. They're both based on Long Island. One is a joint venture between two firms. The other is proposed to do the entire project in-house. And I have a recommendation to make to the board, but I think we're going to reserve any of those additional scope and contractual discussions till executive session. But in any case, each firm is ready to execute a contract and start work in the new year. And that's the project schedule that we're trying to achieve. Begin work early in 2024 and finish work also in 2024. The deliverable to the town is to have this analysis done, to perform the flood studies, to perform the operational studies, and it's going to end with the design basis documents and in some cases repair drawings, engineered drawings for what they propose to be fixed. The next step of the project, which is not included in this phase, is to then find funding and execute on those particular tasks. But there's a lot of open-ended components that who will pay for it, what is the relationship exactly. But the main goal in this public-private partnership is to help North and South Ferry companies as private companies understand sequencing and vulnerabilities, and to share resources with them on an effort that they otherwise may not consider pursuing on their own.
Joe, just so the public understands, North Ferry has already started addressing this with one of the slips. South Ferry started on the south side. How does that fit into this whole project?
So the efforts that the individual ferry companies are making are very relevant, but they are one or two pieces of a larger system, not all of which they have control over. So the Greenport side is a great example of the complexity and ownership. There's the private ferry company, which facilitates the seabound transit. Then they have infrastructure where the ferry boat lands onto the facility, which they rent from, I forget the exact landing, whether it's the MTA or the DOT. But just on the Greenport side, for example, the ownership structure is quite onerous. The MTA is at play, the DOT is at play, and the Village of Greenport is also a participant there. And from what I understand, it's different components of the same property. The village owns certain sections, DOT and MTA have right-of-ways and access to other components. So to answer your question, the ferry company is investing in things like ramp extensions, raising of mechanical equipment, but this project aims to look at the more broad system and perhaps engage and make recommendations to those other entities like DOT or like the village, so that we can facilitate other upgrades so that there is no weak link.
The South Ferry just completed on the North Haven side, an extension of the ramp. I believe the ramp was extended 6 or 8 feet.
Yes.
And something of that nature.
Yes. And also, Jim, I don't mean to interrupt, but just to piggyback on that, now that those upgrades have been done, we know from Sandy, for instance, that even though they were able to get onto the boat, they had to drive through 18 inches of water to get to the ramp. Now that the ramp is extended, we know that there are other weak links in the system.
Right.
And those are the types of upgrades that we're seeking to remedy.
And that involves the whole plaza, raising the plazas and everything. Did you say 590,000?
190,000.
190,000, that sounds a lot better. Okay, thank you. I was just gonna say, my gosh.
Big match.
The other thing was on Jennifer's report this morning, FEMA Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, Ferry Flood Mitigation, $202,370. Updates to New York State vendor selection expected to be completed by the end of the year. So that is that what we put in for the FEMA Hazardous Mitigation Grant Program?
Yes.
It seems like that was submitted, and it looks like that is for $202,370.
That's one of the bids.
That's one, okay.
Richard, Stella, you have any questions or comments?
We're set. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay.
It's something that just speaking, observing all of this, that it's going to take, several years to, make headway with this. This is not something that's an easy fix. This is something that is, as you designed, in a bigger picture, happens over the course of time. It may take you 5, may take you 10 years, but eventually, having that planned out engineered wise to be able to accommodate sea rise, knowing where we're going with sea rise is important. I mean, it's vitally important.
And again, having this in place goes to the next step of funding. If and when, the town's ready to do it, they can apply for it because they have to.
Yeah, that's totally right. Yeah, the probably the underappreciated value in this project is that you will have a design basis document that will demonstrate how we studied these problems, how we analyze solutions, how we picked a solution, and that's the document that you can use to solicit future funding. So grants become available related to sea level rise. You can take this document, go back to those agencies and say, we have actually professionally studied these things. Here's what we need to do, and align that with the funding from the grant, as opposed to simply coming forward and saying, I have this problem. It may be totally legitimate, and but without that professional backing, you have much less credentials to stand on as you apply for subsequent funding. So that's really the emphasis here, is to set the stage for future projects.
When you look at the various vehicles that go up the ramp or down the ramp, it doesn't have to be during a hurricane or a nor'easter. It could be during a full moon tide with, and everything hits right with high tide or with low tide, that, if you're driving in a Prius, for instance, that's built very, very low to the ground, that becomes a little bit of an issue. So it doesn't have to be, people have to think about you're spending all this money for a hurricane and it happens every. No, this is something that it's real, and it's something that's becoming more commonplace, almost on a monthly basis, where you have, extreme high tides or extreme low tides. And, it's, again, for some vehicles like my Jeep, it's not an issue. But for other vehicles, when you see them, and we have every type of vehicle known to mankind on those ferries, commercial and privately owned, so it's a real challenge.
That's right, and this project is specific to water level elevation, regardless of what the cause is, either an isolated foul weather event or the progressive rising of seas due to long-term trends in climate change. So it doesn't matter what the cause is. This study is analyzing what happens to our ferry operations when water is at a set elevation. It could be from a regular high tide. It could be from a regular high tide 20 or 30 years from now, or it could be from an isolated hurricane event, next week or next month. And one thing that's particularly important about this project that we haven't mentioned is that the ferry companies themselves will be a significant liaison to this project. We're relying on their expertise to their own systems to work with the consultant to make sure that the solutions that are developed are ones that are supported from the folks on the ground and the folks with the institutional knowledge about how they operate their business, how they operate their equipment. So the town will serve as the project manager. Certainly, we are the link to the funding stream, but the benefit from the town's perspective is the improvements in service that we parlay to the community. But the ferry companies are the ones who are acting as the sort of experts in terms of what they need to have fixed or what their concerns are and what's achievable on their end. We don't want to provide them with a solution that they're not interested in or they don't want to buy into. That also defeats the purpose of the project. So this is very much centered around what works and what solutions are most palatable towards these private businesses.
Stella?
Just thought of something that is interesting. Last week, there was an extreme high tide, and we typically, in high tide situations on the Shelter Island side, would go in on our west slip, and we would not have been able to be functional. But with our new slip on the east side, it was a piece of cake. So
Nice.
that's a real live example of where we would have lost perhaps a couple of hours and we didn't lose any time. So, we're excited to not be in the only self-funding mode, but to potentially have access to funding going forward.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it is a very important public-private partnership. Yeah. Thanks, Joe.
Joe, thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, next on the list, we have the WQI rebate program. We have one to approve, I guess, Wallace 8 Montclair.
Why is this on the
I
agenda?
don't know.
Because we approved it on October 31st.
Christina, any,
I have no idea.
Is there like something new? I don't recall anything from a WQI meeting.
Was it the request for payment?
If it's request for payment, it doesn't go through us because it's already been approved. It goes through the regular vouchering system.
Yeah.
So if anyone knows why it's on here, but I was like,
Yeah, but I thought that that's Kathleen sent it.
Oh,
Maybe it was by her.
yeah, because my spreadsheet shows, and I went back and just double checked the minutes just now.
okay,
When was that one?
we'll have it next week,
It's done, October 31st. I mean, unless there's,
unless there's some reason it's on there.
yeah.
All right, next on the list is the CPF acquisition plan. This has been an ongoing process for should have been for the last four or 5 years.
yeah, it should have been,
On ourselves
should
to
have been the CPF
try to get it done.
advisory
So,
board.
We're hoping to wrap this thing up and put it on the agenda for next week's workshop.
On board meeting.
Anything we need to walk through, BJ?
I did highlight some stuff here.
BJ, if I could just start.
Yeah.
In the very beginning, in the introduction.
Yeah.
Is there a need to discuss the housing?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's been batted back and forth. I did not have that in there when I did it. And then CPF has considered this plan on, 2 or 3 occasions with some depth in their meetings. And I was told to include it by the CPF chair. So I thought, well, why not? It's a transfer tax. It's sort of connected to CPF, but Attorney Kiley gave me a good rationale. Do you mind repeating that?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
All right,
For not
so,
including it.
so this is apples and oranges.
Yeah.
Community Housing Fund, Community Preservation Fund,
Right.
2 separate funds.
Yes.
With 2 separate enabling legislations. You have 64E of the town law and 64K. We have 2 separate chapters governing each fund. I understand how the, WQI was a little different because it was actually an amendment to 64E, which allowed it to be part of
Right.
the Community Preservation Fund. So that's fine, but this is totally separate. The only similarity is the primary funding mechanism, which is the transfer tax. So that's and within our town code, it's within Article 2 of the Community Preservation Fund. It speaks to the Community Housing Fund, but it's just because of that same mechanism, which is the transfer tax. 5%. So the funds within the Community Preservation Fund and the Community Housing Fund cannot be commingled. They have to be in separate accounts. Therefore, community housing should not be referenced in this because you can't use the Community Preservation Fund for community housing. So,
And vice versa.
correct.
So then that's great. We'll take the housing out. That's fine. The second paragraph, though, of the introduction does talk about this unique thing. It was, the second paragraph compares WQI, community housing funds monies and how they travel. So in that paragraph, I'm discussing that WQI funds are 20% of CPF can up to 20% of CPF funds can go to WQI on an annual basis if you encumber the funds for future WQI projects. However, if the funds are not used or a CPF purchase is interesting that you would like those funds back, you can do that. Those funds can come back. With housing, of course, that's not true. Housing is a dedicated a revenue stream, it goes to housing, there's no option here. So what I'm questioning, what I think I would like to do is just keep in a small discussion in that second paragraph about WQI funds and how they relate to CPF funds. It's explanatory, I think it also has a recommendation here that the town should continue
Oh, yeah,
to fully
definitely.
encumber those funds every
Because
year.
WQI is part of the CPF.
Right,
Yeah,
right, but
definitely.
I want to leave that in there.
You know, that part,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, good, okay, so I will.
I like that description a lot because, it helps clarify for people that, every year, 20% of the CPF funds go into a separate account for water quality. The board chooses to roll that over every year so that we can encumber funds so that we have a volume worth working with. And then, should CPF ever need that money for something, CPF can always come back to WQI and say, hey, we need our money back.
Yeah.
But
But that's a town
If-
board decision. Yes,
Correct.
Yes.
But if that money either never goes into WQI or gets taken away at the end of every year, then you can never have that money back for
Right.
WQI.
The encumbering
Water
of
quality.
the full amount every year
Yeah.
gives you the maximum flexibility. That's the
Right.
answer.
And that's in here.
Yeah.
And that's very important. That was the wisdom of the town board back when the WQI was first put in, that, with Fred Deal's guidance, that town board every year does encumber that money.
Yeah,
Because if not, it has to go back to the CPF.
yeah,
And that's been an issue in discussion with the CPF board, that they want their money back.
Right.
And this town board feels that just as the CPF fund grows, the WQI fund should be able to grow.
And it has,
Right.
and it gives us the ability to consider things such as the cleanup of Fresh Pond. It gives
Right.
us the ability to consider things that seemed too expensive, frankly, before. And now, because, the pandemic interrupted the stream of work getting done, we have built a nice balance. It's not quite the balance, just a nice balance that really gives this town an ability to get going on some stuff. And we tried the shellfish restoration and the eelgrass restoration. That's jury's still out. But it was nice to have the ability to try that. Now, I would tell you to go to page 3. I've highlighted here where it says said plan. Okay, so talking about the acquisition plan, town is required to fund a project, to said community preservation fund project plan. Each town board may also adopt a management and stewardship plan for interest or rights in real property acquired pursuant to this section. No monies from the fund shall be expended for management and stewardship except as approved in said plan. Now, I'm above the highlight right now. This to me is not contradictory so much, but it's a little confusing because the town board may also adopt a management and stewardship plan, right? But then in italics, no monies shall be expended except as approved in said plan.
No, I think it's talking about the stewardship plan.
That's what I'm saying. But it says it may adopt a steward, like you don't have to,
Correct,
but
but if,
then you couldn't spend any money.
no, on stewardship.
That's what I'm
unless
talking about.
it's in the plan.
Yeah,
Yes,
in the
correct.
stewardship, for each property.
Correct.
Okay, so this has been another discussion with CPF. I sure wish the chair was here today, because I have been arguing in my short time here that we need a stewardship plan for each property. And it should be updated each year.
Well, that is part of the
Right, but we don't really get that.
regulations,
We
that we
get
do
a,
have stewardship plans. for-
well, we have original stewardship plans, is what I've been told.
Right,
And
the budget.
And then each year we have a budget.
right.
But sometimes that budget doesn't say the detail. I just don't know what you're comfortable with here. It's a lot, maybe it's a lot of work to ask of the committee. I don't know, but I just wanted to point it out. I felt like annually, the stewardship plans for each property should be a little bit more fleshed out. I also want to remind you that stewardship for the properties is a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, this board, the CPF board, has really stepped up and done things with the properties in conjunction with the trail organization that weren't being done before. And they're ambitious. And I mean that all in the best possible way, they're ambitious. But should the town board have a little bit more detail to chew over annually, maybe biannually, it's just something to think about if we should strengthen that in this acquisition plan. So as here it says, that's why I highlighted, for up to a 3-year period would be adequate for said stewardship plan to provide a description and estimated cost for each project. And should be approved and adopted by local law and updated from time to time at the discretion of town board. I just don't feel like we've been kind of doing that. So,
I think there are some.
It's a little
properties that
confusing.
Probably have a more intense stewardship plan than others, like obviously the West Neck property, they're working on something rather significant, so that.
And that will probably be a
very
3-year.
detailed in the funding and everything else, how the money's being used, what it's going to. Some of the properties are pretty simple in that you're just mowing the path.
Yes.
So you kind of understand that, but I think every year you can do a quick review of all these stewardship plans and say, is this stewardship plan still what we're doing? Or has it evolved in some way? Or should we do something to address certain things like maybe the mile-a-minute vine, if it's taking over a property? Do we need to improve our stewardship plan to account for that?
right, so should we have a directive in this paragraph that says CPF should come before the town board in September of every year during budget process to discuss in detail, so for an example, the West Neck Preserve, that is on a 3-year project. They would come September of 2024 and say, look, we've done a year, this is what we got done in a year. Expenses are running in what we've told you, or we're over, we need more money, or et cetera. And then just outline those simpler maintenance and what they expect that to cost in terms of town, that's the other thing, town employee hours. That tracking maybe could be tightened up as well. So I was thinking maybe just say September CPF should report in the budget process to the town board, shall report to the town board with the expectations for the following year and where they're at. And the final piece here is the legislation does say, now, our funds are quite big right now, but we do a couple of good purchases and it could be very little again until we build up. Shall be no more than 10% of the fund balance. The expenditures, 10% I think is the number, on stewardship.
We do in the CPF budget have under the stewardship category an account code. So Gordon did submit a budget for 91,000 for trail and tree.
Yes. But, and I know that he has a spreadsheet that he breaks it out.
Right.
Those are all good, but I'm saying I think there needs to be a communication with the town board, because I think the town board, in approving the budget, has a responsibility to know where it's going and the multi-year projects especially, West Neck Preserve, how you doing, how's it going? Sort of what we've asked of Kate Rossi Snook, let us know, give us some reports. This is money that we're responsible for ultimately.
But since we do have a budget figure, that should be
Yeah.
an easy enough lift for them to come in and say,
Oh,
this is
yeah.
what the 91,000 is comprised of.
Well, and I think it's also gonna be important as they start to move forward, and with Deer and Tick, they came to us budget season with an ask for money
Yeah.
to do habitat management and restoration.
Yes.
So if they're gonna partner with CPF and they're gonna look at specific properties and update the stewardship plan to include habitat restoration and management, well, then that needs to be reflected in the stewardship plan and in their budgetary ask, and it should be well defined so we know what the money's going to.
Yeah.
And it's trackable, so we can track highway hours, we can track the expenses.
Exactly, especially, although now, but especially with going to the QuickBooks idea of tracking each property, by itself. And I also do think that that's a question that needs to be asked, just needs to be asked, not anything more than that, of highway hours. What are they for the year, the year to date in September of 2024? And does that seem reasonable to everybody? Because again, that should be accurate, because that affects the bottom line of the property taxpayer. If it's not accurate, I don't think it's going to be inaccurate except in one direction, where we just failed to do that. And with the new highway guy coming on board, it's a good time, I think.
I totally agree with BJ's suggestion. In other municipalities, that's how it's done. Stewardship plans are individually based, very specific, and brought before the town board from time to time to update the town board, and the town board blesses the expenditures or the continuing expenditures. So there has to be oversight by the town board.
Yeah.
More oversight.
Other than, here's my budget for next year. Yeah. A little chat, I think it'd be great. And you know what? I think it's also great because it keeps it in front of the public. This is what CPF is doing. I mean, I just think that that's a worthy exercise in and of itself.
Well, it also helps educate the public on what they're seeing happen. So
Yeah.
for example, the West Neck Preserve, people get really confused on what's happening on that property.
I know,
And so, you
and
know,
it's controversial.
and it's a big lift to continuously explain and educate the public on the fact that we're trying to turn that back into a native meadow where it has been overgrown by invasives and things like that. And so it's actually a very long process to eliminate things like mugwort, which are so invasive and, you know,
Yeah.
really troubling to get rid of, but there's a whole process. And so it's
Right.
going through the process. And I think if they were to come to us and explain that periodically, that would help too, just in the public.
Exactly, understanding that. And, you know, that's also interesting. A lot of people have mugwort invasives. So if that's talked about with some regularity, like, okay, we've done phase one, we rototilled everything. Now phase two is to lay down cardboard. I'm not really sure what they decided on, but, you know, to totally smother the rest of it. Phase three is, you know, if it's out there in the public that worked for us, you know, then it becomes a learning thing for the public as well. Because there is some doubt out there by folks who have dealt with mugwort that it's not, you can't do, it won't work. So it would be interesting if this method works and we could show that to the public. Okay, page 5, listed below, oh, I think I just wanted to make sure that I put that list in there. So CPF properties in the, you know, that are in the folder. I'll fill in the property tax lot fund numbers. I just got this on Friday. Yeah, I was hoping to get this from Gordon, but I didn't, so this is from Catherine from the files. That's where that list comes from, just so you know. Just gonna scroll down and see if I have anything else highlighted.
I have a question.
Oh, and the Wellfield thing, you saw that, right?
I think it's before we get.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, Appendix C.
Yeah.
What is the difference between Appendix C and Appendix D?
C and
D.
D. D is everything available. Vacant land, all of it.
So,
Appendix C attempts to prioritize.
but, okay, so here's my question. If something's not on C but is on D, is it still?
Fine.
It's fine?
It's fine.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. C is just, I think, for me, it's sort of, if there's a property on C, which is being considered actually currently, and a property on D comes up, you would stay with the C, unless, all other things being equal, unless there's something about something on that's on list D, which is all the vacant property, that really, it's a bigger piece and it abuts an existing preserve or something, but it should be on C if it's that important and it's vacant, and it's vacant. So it just is the other thing, again, I'd asked for CPF to provide for me, but they haven't, on this list is what category? Why do we want to preserve the ones on list C? So I'm going to go through and just put my own stamp on that, I think. And it doesn't mean that if someone else thinks, oh, no, we're not going to acquire that for, what will we call that? Shoreline,
Oh, yeah, if you're gonna purchase a property that's not hardened.
Right.
To allow like the wetlands to be able to move inland.
Right,
trying to remember.
sea level rise accommodation, maybe we could call it that.
Yeah, Jim, did you have a term from your PEP meetings?
Shoreline preservation, no?
Is it shoreline? When you're allowing the shoreline to,
Adaptation.
shoreline adaptation, let me just type that in here. Yeah, so again, I think just because you put the category in there, if there really is a better reason that you didn't think of or whatever, that's fine. This is just sort of a guideline. Shoreline adaptation, I just want to write that down.
Because the law states that you cannot purchase a property unless it's in the plan, the acquisition plan.
Plan.
So you want a broad universe of every potential possible piece of land. And that, so it's in there, and then you prioritize and you have the ones you want.
Right, and it's a small list at 15. I think it could be larger, but
Term that they throw around a lot, BJ.
Yeah.
The Peconic Estuary Climate Vulnerability Assessment,
Mm.
where they go around and they are now assessing
Yeah.
lines
or,
on risk,
yeah,
for flooding and changes and that's something that's kind of key, that's available.
right. Well, we do think that some of these might be, when you brought up the other day, Jim, Meg and I were talking that there are some of these properties on here, not to specify, that may be eligible for those PEP funds that you were saying, for purchases. So maybe if the CPF gets to it first, they could in fact be reimbursed. I don't know if that would work with the PEP funds, but it would be nice to know.
The other term that they use a lot is critical lands projection. Critical lands, something
yeah.
like Pecosi's. It's a critical structure down there.
The oil tanks?
Yeah, and everything, how you protect those areas, you know,
Right,
key environmental areas that you are trying to protect.
yeah. Okay. All right, so,
But this also includes developed properties as well on this list, right?
yes.
Is it just developed properties over a certain amount of acreage or?
Get to number, Appendix E.
Yeah, I think it's like 3 acres or larger.
Yeah, I think it's 3 acres or larger. Thinking if there's a structure on it, and it's less than 3 acres, it's unlikely. Not that it's not impossible, but it's less.
So here's my thought on that, because when PEP came, we were speaking with them, and something that you are allowed to do with the CPF funds is to purchase a developed property and restore it to a natural state, which might be beneficial on low-lying shoreline areas where that property owner is now struggling with increased consistent flooding, a lack of potability in their water supply.
Yes.
They may want to sell that property to CPF to allow it to go back to help with,
Right.
maintaining a natural shoreline. So I would say if it's not bulkheaded
Yeah,
and it's still, it allows for, nature to kind of take over.
right,
And they've done that in a few places. I think Hampton Bays and West Hampton have done that in areas where people were used to have historical homes out in the marshes, kind of. And
yes.
so CPF has purchased those, taken them down, and then lets the marsh kind of come back.
So, so then that comes back to the appendix. I mean, then it's literally, it's not every property, but then identifying, or, I mean.
I would say waterfront properties.
Right, so waterfront. So can I, instead of listing all the properties in the body of the plan, not in an appendix, say, in addition to appendix C, D, and E, properties that are waterfront but maybe less than 3 acres and have a structure on it can also be considered if they meet crucial shoreline adaptation needs.
I like that, but I think we would have to get specific.
All right,
I would say it can't be a bulkheaded property.
yeah.
It would have to allow for the movement of wetlands.
Would you not take a bulkhead off?
Because then it will impact everyone down the line.
Right,
So if you
right.
take out your bulkhead, now you wash out,
You're like
washes out your neighbors, washes out everyone down the line. You're
So that
the
makes
next
it,
domino.
that makes it harder to identify from the assessment roll specific properties.
But I think you could kind of create a definition of what might be appropriate.
Right, but
If
he's
you're
saying I
already
need
adjacent to
specific.
wetlands, if you're unhardened, if
No, I understand that matrix, but I think you have to have
Elevation.
specific
criteria.
property, no, specific properties.
Oh, listed.
That-
Yeah,
Yes.
and I'm saying, I don't know if,
It should be a living document, so
Right.
we task CPF with determining.
oh,
those
yes,
properties. Or
okay,
we've got
yeah,
Actually, I
harbor
mean,
masters who could.
yeah,
yes,
pulling up
Identify.
GIS
yeah,
and just going around the coast may not be that hard. If it's bulkheaded, you wouldn't count it. Like, I would count,
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of properties in Shorewood that are unhardened, that are on the
Yeah.
marsh by South Ferry that I would include. There's Southbury
Yeah.
Hills area. I mean, there's a lot you can do just going around, looking
Right.
through these bulkheads, no bulkheads, and just kind of.
right, all right, let me give it a go.
And they're already starting to do that going around for docks.
Right.
Yes,
So if they're gonna be doing, circumnavigating the island,
yeah,
get a database for us, could we add that to the database list?
okay, let me just make a note. What happened there? Use GIS to identify less than 3 acres with structures. Waterfront. That go on a separate list. Okay.
Certain, just so you know, improved properties that have historical features that could be saved.
Right, community character,
Yeah.
right, yeah. Yeah.
So like your example in Hampton Bays of those cottages and those potentially could be saved and purchased through CPF money.
Right. Okay, so I don't think there was anything else highlighted.
On the bottom of Appendix C,
Yeah,
we have all the, criteria.
right.
Q, was that added or was that always there?
I
Good, I want to make sure, but it's.
Yeah, and the other ones, however, are enumerated in 64E.
Yes,
So we are adding something that's not expressly enumerated.
right.
But, the hope is that that the committee of committees is reestablished with Fred Thiel's guidance or leadership, and that can be discussed.
Yes.
Whether or not this should be added officially to, explicitly.
Yeah.
I think so.
Is that this Friday?
I just go with
The 15th,
Okay,
10 a.m.
okay.
So, as, I think no harm putting it in there.
Oh,
This is me.
absolutely.
Right, and it's a living document, and if as a result of those meetings, it's decided that absolutely not, well, then it comes out, But I think, again, maximum flexibility is the key here. Okay. All right, so then my goal is, Christina, right, that I need my corrections to be made, and to Amber, no later than probably Friday end of business for next week, or this is a resolution.
Yes,
If a resolution doesn't become a hearing, it doesn't need.
No, but posted, so it's available.
Just, I have to, I haven't been able to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Development rights.
There is, yes,
How do
just,
we address that? Because I thought we were getting away from.
we are.
we have no way of using them, so it's not worth buying them.
Yeah, we have that discussed.
Yeah, you put it in there.
Here we go, category 1 and category 2 properties. Page 5. So category 1 properties, purchase of fee interest. This kind of outlines, we really want to get sizable land parcels, just prioritizing natural state, aquifer, marine waters, watershed, wetlands, smaller land parcels, if they are contiguous to already existing open space. The acquisition represents an aggregation with other protected parcels, and there may be other exceptions, such as market value, assistance in the form of a grant, et cetera.
That's very consistent with that.
Yeah.
What they're looking.
Right.
Exactly, you almost quoted it verbatim.
Right,
What they're looking.
and category,
The lesser
yeah,
category.
category 2, less than fee interest, and then we say, including, not limitation, the purchase of development rights and the rights to impose restricted covenants relating to vistas and natural features of the land, preservation of natural features. The ranking of parcels targeted for acquisition will take into consideration whether the acquisition would involve the purchase of fee interest or the purchase of development rights only. Accordingly, it is possible the rankings and priorities of various parcels will change when these factors are considered. And the further down here, it says, it should be emphasized that these criteria are guidelines, not hard and fast rule. The prioritization of fee interest over less than fee interest reflects the general preference in the CPF statute that all else being equal, acquisition of land that is open, and this is key, and available to the public is preferable to the acquisition of less than fee interest in land that is not open and available to the public. I think that's the key sentence in that whole discussion. Because it really, why spend public money to preserve a development right that the public can't walk on? That is straightforward to me. It's,
Unless you had a vibrant farming community, and you wanted to
oh, yes,
purchase development rights so those farms don't turn into subdivisions, then
Right.
that makes sense.
that totally makes sense, yeah. And we don't, our two biggest farms, the horse farms, are already protected. Development rights, I believe, are already gone. So I don't think we have anything that would fit that criteria, what I think is discussed in here. All right, I feel like leaving now and getting to work.
So Stephen, this is just by resolution, there's no public hearing.
It's a good question. The original adoption, I believe, was through public hearing. And if that's the case, to amend it, you have to do it via public hearing. But I'll look into that, because the statute's a little fuzzy in that regard. But I'll let you know.
One other thing is, this document has in the past included a map that identified the properties preserved with CPF money, and identified, put on the map also in a different color, of course, the properties that were prioritized for acquisition in the future, which is a nice visual, but I couldn't get it. So there's a template or something, or somebody out there that has done that work for CPF in the past, and I just never got it. And after it was discussed that I would get it in August. So again, I put this map up here, but it does give you an idea. There's a lot of green on that map. It's a kind of a lovely thing.
And just again, just for FYI, you know, every once in a while it comes up that, well, you know, Neshomic is, you know, could be developed. Neshomic is part of the,
Nature Conservancy.
Thank you, Nature Preserve, no, the town's Nature Preserve.
Oh, yeah,
system.
yeah.
And it was adopted and they agreed to it. So the only way it can be subdivided is by public referendum. So
Yeah.
it is preserved.
It is preserved.
Yeah.
And TNC as well. It's a
Right.
premier.
Right.
And as I found out when I went to the party, or the thing a couple of weeks ago, that it's not just 2,039 acres of land, it's also what they have. As a trivia question, I asked this, you know, what is the number one TNC property in the United States that has the most coastline?
Mm-hmm.
The answer is Neshomic.
Wow.
The number one property in all 50 states, shoreline-wise, because of the amazing
Sure.
Yeah.
amount of creeks and bays and everything else and inlets that go inside Neshomic. You know, it's really, it is a jewel, there's no doubt about it, but you're adding another 500-600 acres on there, you know, so that the property really is more than 2,039. It's really 2,600 or 2,700 acres, something around that nature.
Yeah,
Thanks, BJ.
you bet.
It's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work.
Okay, Meg?
We're going around the table?
Yes.
Just catching up.
Next year, Meg, you'll get to sit here. You go first. Who do you want to put in that chair then?
We'll see.
So CPAC, we have CPAC meeting tonight at 6:30. We're continuing with chapters 7 and 8, which is the natural environment chapter, waterways chapter. We're going to see how far we get. And then that's sort of what I had. We had CPAC on Thursday too. We're just working our way through all the comments that we've received from the public. That's what I've been doing. Short and sweet.
Very good. Jim?
Yeah, Julie Lane, this is for you and for the rest of the people that are out there. We did change the honoring the ceremony for Brian Sherman on this Saturday, that's the 9th of December, from 4 o'clock to 3 o'clock. So it's a 3 o'clock start. It's being held at the Shelter Island Community Center. That's just a change of time.
Downstairs or upstairs?
The reason we had to do that was because the police department's coming in to set up for their 6 o'clock function, you know, in the basement. So we didn't want to.
Where will Brian's be, upstairs or down?
Upstairs.
Okay.
Upstairs. Yeah. And then we can go downstairs for a drink or two, you know, that will be definitely something we'll look at. All right, 2 meetings very quickly. A WMAC met last night. All 6 members, we don't have 7, we have 6 members, 5 were physically present, 1 came in by Zoom. I did announce to both Al Loretto and Mark Queen that their terms of service were up February 1st, 2024. Amber was there, overheard that. I reminded them if they're interested in reapplying, that needs to be done to the clerk's office ASAP. Get that word out. On a happy note, elect of acting chairman was done, and it was passed 6-0. The chairperson is going to be Bill Garrity, and the deputy chair is going to be Matt.
That's temporary.
That's
So it's
temporary,
temporary.
correct, absolutely correct. But that went through 6-0. They accepted, let's see, briefing by the town board liaison. I talked about all the things we talked about today with PEP, with natural shorelines, resilient communities, and things of that nature. So I don't want to repeat myself. They were very satisfied of me trying to help to stay on that link with PEP. So I'm next year going to try to get on the Citizens Advisory Committee, as a citizen, and be able to fill the town board in on what's happening with PEP. They may also decide to have a PEP representative as well, to get involved as well. We had a briefing by Bo Payne, Deering Harbor, New York State DC conditions on rainfall, anything less than a half hour during anything less than a half inch in a 24-hour period is okay, but anything over a half inch, obviously they're closing, they have to close that down. He's working with the New York State DC on looking into that, into that fact. We continue to have Blue Water Task Force. They are testing every other week, not every week, but every other week. That's still going on. Brief by the chairperson. He talked about, and we talked to Christina about a 2-day window prior to the meeting for applications. We also talked about complete applications. The 2 applications we had there last night, one of them again on the boat lift, there needed to be additional information. So we need to notify the applicants. If the application is incomplete, somebody's going to have to screen those, more carefully, because people do show up at these meetings thinking that their application is going to be heard. It happened again last night.
So what's the process? Who reviews the application?
Well, it comes into the town clerk's office and, right? And it's reviewed at town clerk's office and, for completeness. And if it's not complete, don't put it on the agenda.
So it's not the WMAC?
No.
So the town clerk should notify the applicant that you will not be heard this week.
Correct. Notify them of that and what's missing.
Right.
That's most important. Like, if you can get it to me, today, maybe we can, if you notify them, 4 or 5 days in advance, of the meeting, and you can get it to me in the next 2 or 3 days, I can keep it on the agenda. If not, taking it off the agenda. This is what you're
The
missing.
applicant, just for fairness, they were notified yesterday.
Yeah.
But their representative is Jack Costello, so he was notified.
Oh,
So Jack,
Not them directly,
Yeah.
because
Right.
once he's expediting the application, we do not communicate with the applicants directly.
oh,
He
okay.
was notified, he knew this.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. All right. Thanks, Christina.
we did hear one bulkhead application in kind in place using a new vinyl. Vote was 6-0 to approve that bulkhead application. On other business, Chapter 53, the committee is still working. There was some discussion about, and I urged them, Amber was there and overheard me say this, that the town board, whether it's this town board or the future town board, is not interested in letting this moratorium go on forever. So that I think you need a target date, a realistic target date. If you've already started working on, which they have, and they're involved in this, November, December, January, February, how about trying to get something together by the end of March, which I think would be a good idea, have it done by the end of March and present it to the new town board. Maybe you have to limit your scope. Maybe you're not taking on the entire code. Maybe you're taking on the most important parts of the code, and then you can have appeal for another moratorium to finish it in year 2. So that's just a thought that we threw out last night, but they will work on that. What else was going on there? Cost of new dock fee structures. One of the members came up and said he thought that the fees were, should have been raised, but not raised as high. He's saying now that with the new applicant, you might spend anywhere to $4,000 to $5,000 on the small dock, anywhere to $5,000 to $10,000 on additional dock, with the amount of money, because every footing that goes in is being charged money on. So he asked that the town board look at those fees and think about it a little bit, because he thought they were
Just one member?
No, it was one member, but he did get some sympathy or support, I would say, from other members. I think, Tommy chimed in the same thing, and a few other people chimed in. So maybe it's just something, Amber, that you want to put on the thing to, take a look at in the future.
I would just add that the cost of a new dock, and that fee as a percentage of the cost of the new dock, is probably less than 10%. I don't think it's onerous.
Okay. I asked the if we could get some pump out information from the three marinas. Record keeping is good at some, it's not good at others. They're not required to keep records, but there is reimbursement available for them. There is a stimulus for them to do this procedure and to pump out as many boats you can because you're reimbursed for that from the state. So I think a more accurate record, if we're worried so much about buying a pump out boat, let's see if the 3 pump out stations are actually, how many boats they're pumping out during the course of the season. So I think that's information that we want to follow through with in the future. There was some discussion about maintaining or repairing a dock, and I would during this moratorium, somebody repair a dock or maintain a dock. Repairing is fixing, maintaining is, it's still operational, but it needs a little work. So there was some discussion on that. I did say that the PEP is still interested in these conservation moorings, that's a thing that they're going to approach the WMAC on next year to see if we can find a spot somewhere on Shelter Island for a half a dozen or more conservation moorings. So I just threw that out there for them. And the other thing that the person brought up about the fee structure, by the way, it was about the people that have already started the application process, which he said, quote, can take up to 1 year. So if you're asking people to outlay $5,000 to $10,000 and the moratorium continues to go, I said, that's all the more reason why, if it takes that long, we're not, I don't think the Newtown board's going to have this moratorium go on forever. You're going to have a drop dead date on the moratorium. And make the subcommittee work a little harder over a shorter period of time to come up with recommendations to advise the new town board on what they want to go. So that virtually was the meeting. We met this morning.
Before we get to the next one.
Yeah.
Amber, did you have something about WMAC?
Yeah, I just wanted to note what Jim's saying is that I've also ran into already that when someone submits an application for a dock that may have 38 pilings, gets sent to the WMAC and they revise their application and they go down to 30 pilings, that fee is different. So it's going to play back and forth. So I don't know if you want to wait till it's going to be approved, they submit the fee and get the permit, or how you want to work that out. But otherwise you're back and forth with refunds, not enough money, too much money.
Right.
So not an application fee, you would then call it a permit fee. Right?
Right.
Yeah. Yes. Good point. Yeah. Thanks, Amber.
And the capital planning group met this morning. We talked about the composition of the committee, whether we should have 4 members or 5 members. Since I'm leaving, we replaced me on the committee, and right now we're going to let Amber, who's going to take over the chairperson of that position in January, discuss that with the new town board and advise whether there'll be 4 or 5 members. They feel comfortable that we can have 4 if we needed a backup. For Amber, because she's now a supervisor and is called in a different direction, they might have somebody that could sub in there and make sure that they have 4 people present. Meeting dates, I talked about having the meeting dates every other month, because I really don't think that, again, I prepare these agendas are pretty well thought out beforehand, and there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's not enough to report on when you meet every 4 weeks. I just think that my recommendation, of course, it's just a recommendation, is to meet in January, March, May, July, September, November. This frees up the 3 weeks the last 3 weeks in September and all of October to do budget, which I think is a nice when you have, a couple of people like we had on this town board that are on the committee, that we can focus on budget as opposed to having to squeak in another meeting or two, during that time frame. Obviously, the mission statement was adopted in November 4th, which to serve as an advisory board to the town board as it relates to a multi-year capital plan, which we now have. And as Jim Reed would always say, reviews the town assets with consideration on priorities, costs, and funding resources. The municipalities need to know what they own, and we definitely know every piece of equipment, every facility that we own is in our, is being looked at and evaluated in our capital plan. We do have that $300,000 in our capital reserve fund, which is great. I did thank, and I wanted to say it publicly here at an open meeting, one of the best decisions we ever made was the hiring of Jen Massiano Hingham. We would not be where we are today without Jennifer's guidance and assistance, and particularly her follow-through on grants. She's an invaluable part. We don't pay a lot of money for that. What we pay out in a year, if it's, $28,000 to $32,000 a year, she brings in, close to $1 million or more in grant monies, through a variety of grants. So she's a pleasure to work with. The development of the capital plan is a major step forward for our committee. The development of the town's hazardous mitigation plan. I thank Jim Reed and the others that worked on that plan. Hiring a full-time town engineer. We had that with John Cronin, now we have it with Joe. Joe is just, as we had him here at today's meeting, his ability to communicate with others and to make things understandable is impeccable. And of course, we have Brian right here in the audience, ending a 34-year tremendous career working, his way up through the ranks. And the last 5 years serving as the town's superintendent of highways and commissioner of public works, and also taking on the recycling center. In many towns, that's 3 different people, folks. We have one person that has done this masterfully for the last 5 years. So not enough good things to be said about what Brian Sherman leads by example. And I think the people that work for him know that. The other thing is the establishment, and I have to thank Amber and Jim for this, establishment of the Shelter Island Grants Management Policy and Procedures booklet that we put out some time ago. On our project updates, our town buildings, I can make this available for people rather than go through it, but there's not a major, when people say, what have you done along Route 114? Between the community center, Justice Hall, police departments, the senior center, the EMS buildings, and all the other things that we have done, it is amazing what has been done in the last 4 years, from technology improvements to plumbing, electrician, insulation, window replacement, stairs, sidewalks, brick pointing, roofing, parking lot paving, all kinds of things that we've done there. It's a work in progress, but I think we've spent a lot of good time upgrading our buildings. Our roads speak for themselves. And we were marked at a score of 63. We'd probably score about 75 or better now. Again, thanks to Fred Thiel and Ken Laval. I know Ken has stepped down years ago, but thanks to those 2 men, because they provided us with literally over $1 million worth of paving monies. Marine assets, our marine assets is something that we probably neglected for a long period of time. We just put in 6 low groins down at Shell Beach in the last 5 years, an additional 100 boulders that are down there to help stabilize Oak Tree Lane. We replaced the bulkhead at Volunteer Park. Dickinson Creek bulkhead has been replaced. We've also established a park there thanks to the nice work of the Highway Department. We have a bulkhead at Taylor's Island, $350,000, a brand new bulkhead protecting an historic site. We have Condon Dock that was worked on several years back and extended. And we also have a new bulkhead at Graces Lane and one at the Silver Beach Lagoon. So our marine assets, we haven't turned our back on marine assets. Goat Hill Clubhouse and Shelter Island Country Club, Kenny Lewis is coming in here, and Brian, the amount of work that you've done up in there, new roof, new generator, new ventilating system, heating and duct work, plumbing repairs, kitchen work, window replacements, replacement of decking and railings around the entire clubhouse, plus the work you've done on the golf course, tree removal, trimming, cart paths, new tee boxes, and other improvements. The golf course is starting to look like a real municipal golf course. Senior center vehicles, again, we've purchased a number of those, including an 18-seat passenger bus from DOT, and got a grant monies to help us do that. Security enhancements at the ferry terminals, at Justice Hall, and at municipal buildings. New plate readers and cameras at the ferry terminals, and the enhancement and safeguards installed at Justice Hall, which helped safeguard our judges and the people that work there, as well as partitions in Town Hall, Building Department, Assessor's Office, all done during COVID through the work and the expertise of Brian. Recycling center upgrades have been amazing. New grinder, new excavator, new screener, new fleet for our town trucks, 4 brand new trucks that we were able to get about 5 years ago. All on, a lot of that stuff was done on New York State DEC grants. And we're waiting approval now on the last 2 things. On the roof, over the recycling equipment and the excavator, and we are 1402 on the list. We are 1408 and 1409. They are at 1402. So we should be hearing within the next few months and getting some money back, upwards of $200,000. Electric charging stations is something that we need to increase, but we've worked on that a little bit. Municipal wastewater feasibility study, which we have done, and helped get grant monies to support that. Recreational upgrades, thanks to Fred Thiel, the tennis court, pickleball courts, basketball courts, all have been worked on. Community center and the Legion septic system that was put in. New public bathrooms around town. We have the Lou with Volunteer Park. We have Wade's Beach bathroom. We have Crescent Beach trailer, brand new trailer that is being done. We also have a new scale house thing going in at the recycling center for the guys that work down there. In terms of the mitigation plan, they've done an outstanding job. We actually have a great handle, and there is a very, very strong connection between the town's hazard mitigation plan and our capital plan. And you can see that connection if you put the two documents side by side. So, that covers a lot of the things that we've done. I went through that and I passed it out to you guys. I won't go through it today, but I'll make it available to Julie, anybody else that was looking for it. I took the 88-page hazardous mitigation plan, condensed it down to 2 pages. We are on top of that. We have a great handle on how best to help prepare ourselves for storms and sea rise and climate change. And we're working on all of those things right now. And that includes not only the ferry terminals, which we talked about today, but roadways, the causeways, and 17 other additional roads in town that flood on a regular basis just from heavy rains. So we are on those things, and we're progressing very, very nicely. So that's it for capital planning. And we've done, what I think is a good job. And I think that will continue, no doubt about it, because Amber will run that thing extremely, extremely well as we move forward.
Another thing I want to add to that is, Jim, you really did, you give kudos to other people, but you really actually made the capital planning and grants committee happen. Because before I came on the board 8 years ago, the city supervisor at the time did not want to have that committee, thought it was going to be a honeypot for spending money. And I think, you made it happen, pushed forward with it. And it hasn't been a honeypot. It's been like us methodically, systematically going through, making sure road upgrades happen, marine assets are taken care of, anything that has been a big capital expenditure. So kudos to you, because in the early days, you're the one who pushed for it and persisted in making it happen.
Yeah, and I would like,
you.
no, you're welcome. Thank you for those kind words. But I would have to say, I give a lot of the credit back in the early days to Jay Card and to John Cronin. John Cronin has probably given me the nicest compliments I've ever gotten in my life in the last year in particular, because he sees things done that John wished that he had a board like this that was so proactive in terms of taking care of the needs of this town and the assets that we own. Because there was a time where we spent very little time on taking care of our own house. Things were literally falling apart. And, to the point that sometimes we were going to turn grant monies down, hundreds of thousands of dollars to repave roads, because we weren't guaranteed that we'd see that money back. Well, we do have money available in a fund to be able to cover those costs, but we never, and I repeat, never had been let down during my 7 or 8 years of doing this, where we didn't get reimbursed for monies that we were supposed to be reimbursed for. So again, I think great teamwork on that, on it. I will probably miss the grants committee more than any other committee that I've been on because of the professionalism, the people that were on there. It's been and in the success that we've had. We haven't talked, we've done, and we've accomplished. There's a lot more to do, but it's, in fairness to the taxpayer and everything else, there's a plan, and the plan is for 5, 10, 15, 20 years out of how we're going to accomplish this, maintain and improve the facilities that this town owns and possesses. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amber, you have anything?
I didn't have any committee meetings other than.
You're not doing any work?
I've been doing lots.
BJ?
Yeah, I'm good.
Good. Stephen? Amber, you have anything for us?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody in the audience? In the Zoom audience? Pam Nippers?
Hi, everybody. I hope you had a nice Thanksgiving. I'm just curious about this acquisition plan. And it won't go to a public hearing, and we're not sure, and the town attorney is gonna look into it, but it looks like you only have one more opportunity to discuss it at a town board meeting this year on the 12th. Which, of course, if it had to go to public hearing, that hasn't been noticed to the public 10 days in advance. And this document was only posted yesterday.
If it has to go to
So-
public hearing, then obviously we will.
We'll set the
we'll set the
public
public
hearing
hearing.
on December 12th,
But if
and
it-
it will be publicly heard in
If
January.
it doesn't have to go to public hearing, we'll pass it by resolution.
And will the public have any opinion, will we have any time to like put an opinion on and make comments on it? Because I did find a few discrepancies in it that I was concerned with.
Email them.
Email
I would
them
say
in.
email them
Yes,
in.
definitely.
My personal feeling on this is this document is 4+ years overdue. We've been asking the committee to finalize it. BJ had to take it on herself to get it done, and I would really like to get this done before I leave. So if we're allowed to do it, I'd like to get it done. If not, we'll set a public hearing.
But yes,
Okay, in the
that-
meantime, if I see something, I'll be happy to email it to
Please.
BJ.
Thank you.
That would be
Nothing
great.
Yeah,
Is
that would be great.
And then ahead
Yeah,
of.
just a simple thing.
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
ahead
okay,
of the-
terrific. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and
I
at the beginning of
appreciate
at the beginning of every town board meeting, Jerry does open up for any resolution. So if it is something that there's a resolution for on the agenda, that's when you get an opportunity ahead of the meeting to weigh in on those resolutions. And then general topics get opened up at the end of the meeting.
Okay, thanks, Pam. Anybody else? I have two things that we go around the table, I forgot. One is, we got from the New York State Controller's Office, our CPF report, our audit, that they were auditing all the towns on their CPF. This isn't the annual audit, this is the big audit to see how we're doing. And we got, everything was perfect. And they were very happy with the way we're doing it, no recommendations. Everything was handled very well. It is being handled very well. And the second one, tomorrow, we have the final East End Supervisors and Mayors Association meeting for the year. We are the host. It's at the Cheekwood Inn. It'll be a goodbye for obviously myself, but also for the other 4 East End supervisors. We're all leaving. And Fred Deal will be there, and we will grab his ear about the CPF committee
Doing
going
every one of
forward.
these.
So that's it. That's all I have.
And one last thing I
Yes.
wanted to say, by the way, I work for 3 supervisors, and I have to go on record of saying it before I leave. In terms of capital planning, this man has been, I'm talking Supervisor Siller, has been 100% a major support in capital planning. And again, if you don't have a supervisor that does that for you, it doesn't go anywhere. So Jerry, on behalf of the entire committee, I want to thank you very, very, very much for all of your support throughout the years, and particularly for me in the last 4 years. It's been great. Thank you very,
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, if nobody has anything else, I'm going to make a motion. We go into executive session to discuss some employment history of an employee.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Okay, thanks, everybody.